Hello, and welcome back, family, to my channel. My name is Huddy, and tonight we're talking New York by Night. As always, this video is not scripted, and these opinions are mine and mine alone. Just a quick disclaimer before we start, some of you may know that I am a community ambassador for World of Darkness, and so any teasers that you might see for upcoming episodes of New York by Night were likely made by me, meaning I did have early access, but I recorded my thoughts, or at the very least wrote down some bullet points before moving on to the next episode. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about Season 2, Episode 8, Made of Strife, shall we? The episode begins exactly when the penultimate episode left off, with the coterie once again inside Kalida's town car driven by Wilcox, along with their kidnapped target Nigel. All of them have had their suspicions of Kalida's sire Rafferty to a greater or lesser degree, but now they've sold out not just him, but all their sires to the prince, and the idea of how to move forward from this hangs over them like a dark cloud inside the car. They talk about whether to turn Nigel over to Rafferty, especially since he can't tell them much about the incident thanks to Isaac using Dominate on him in Season 1. Kiem asks what the prince will think should they start down the path of playing both sides, and Nigel, of course, overhears her say prince, so Kalida, rolling a messy critical, once again falls to the Ventru clan compulsion of arrogance as she violently grabs his face and forces her will upon him. Braun continues to try and pull any info out of Nigel, who continues to say that he can't, that the monster made sure he can't, so asking in broader terms, Nigel is able to say that the creature wanted a specific skull from the multiple quote-unquote old bones they pulled out of the grounds of the Crescent. Now this is not a surprise because as we know from Season 1, the HMS Hussar is a vessel that wrecked in New York in the 18th century, and likely these bones are the remains of the crew, including the skull Isaac took, which is the skull of the Captain Charles Pole, or as Kat Costello called him, Charlie. Coco, being the owner of a shipping company, wants to make a call to get a copy of the manifest to get more information that Nigel either doesn't know or can't say. Braun offers to call for her, and he pulls out what looks like an old Motorola Razr, which as a millennial gave me flashbacks to circa 2005, where they were reserved for the cool rich kids, especially the hot pink one.
Hello, may I please speak to Taylor Waddell?
She's not home yet. Who's calling?
Oh, this is Susan from Planned Parenthood. I have her test results. If you could have her give me a call as soon as she can. It's urgent. Thank you.
Coco's employee promises to try and find it. The coterie arrive at the Sterling, and Kalida can immediately tell that something is off. The hotel seems empty, the jazz club inside is oddly closed for the evening, and security personnel are increased. Farrell, the concierge we met in Season 2, Episode 1, comes out to greet them in the lobby, complimenting Braun on remembering to wear a jacket. Kalida and Coco immediately question Farrell about the changes to the Sterling, but he feigns ignorance, saying that he's not told much, but if he had to guess, there might be a threat of some kind, hence the closing of the club and the increased security. The coterie convince Kiem to do a little reconnaissance to rely on what ability she has that the coterie have probably correctly clocked as good espionage skills, so she attempts to blink through the lobby past security and get as close to Rafferty's office as possible. Braun, Coco, and Kalida take Nigel into the closed jazz club under the guise of getting him a drink, but really they check around for anything suspicious. What sustenance is there, Nigel claims he can't drink, a phrase Ventru must say very often, and although Kalida attempts to force him to drink, he resists her dominate this time. Kiem, meanwhile, runs into some security guards as she makes her way to Rafferty's office, and with Blink, she is able to stab them both, incapacitating them, her hunger growing to 4, draining one of them completely and incurring stains. The rest of the coterie, worried that Kiem has still not returned from her reconnaissance, decided to take the elevator up to Rafferty's suite, where they see not just Kalida's sire, but Coco's and Braun's as well. Renato, hearing the commotion caused by Kiem, opens the physical door to the suite to find her finishing her meal, immediately coming up with a cover story that they thought Rafferty was being held against his will, which honestly was pure brilliance in the moment on Kiem's part. The coterie and their sires, minus Kiem's of course, sit down for a chat. Coterie immediately warned them all of the monster on the loose, the Tsamitsi, and Renato immediately chastises Rafferty, saying that he said nothing about sending his child after a Sabbat lead. Now I was grinning the whole time watching this because there has been some interesting misinformation going around this season. So in Season 1, the Anarch coterie really were chasing a monster, a wight, which may or may not be the product of Sabbat activity. Here in Season 2, they believe there is a monster on the loose, however it is only Isaac that they fear, not a mindless killing machine like a wight. Also, I should mention, Jason calling Seraph's mother Angela instead of her actual name Alicia has caused some misinformation that we can easily attribute to Argus being smart enough not to use his ghoul's real name in front of other kindred. So when Nigel tells them that a woman named Angela was with the monster, Angela being Isaac's ghoul, the coterie all immediately conclude that Argus, and by extension his child Seraph, are also involved with the monster, which is not the truth. And what I love is all the parallels have ceased from the earlier episodes. And now, in my opinion, instead of parallels, we are seeing opposites. Where the Anarch coterie grew closer, again, save for the final season of the finale, the Camarilla coterie seemed to really go for each other's throats. Where the Anarchs met Isaac's affable sire, and the atmosphere was one of calm, here we are meeting all the sires, and the tension is absolutely palpable. Or maybe I'm reading too much into this. Could you imagine me doing something like that? Rafferty ignores Renato and takes Kalita out on the balcony for a private chat, with Kiem eavesdropping. Kalita informs him about Nigel's quote-unquote mental blocks, but is not really interested in talking about their new friend. Rather, she wants to know why Rafferty has been lying to her, why he has been making her look foolish by allowing her to learn all these little secrets about him from people who know more about him than she does, implying that he doesn't trust her like he claims. Rafferty, with all the smarm he can muster, denies this, so Kalita asks what everyone is doing here and what his true ambitions are in the Bronx, and although he gives the same answers he did when he first told Kalita about all of this in episode 5, this time she doesn't take it on faith and begins pushing for more detailed answers. In response, Rafferty uses Dominate on his child, specifically the Forgetful Mind, and failing the Resist roll, Kalita is forced to forget about the bones, which is an odd thing for Rafferty to be concerned about, in my opinion, the bones in the warehouse, but this man is playing 4D chess with Monopoly pieces, so what the hell do I know? Back inside, Renato concludes that Nigel's compulsion cannot be helped by anyone present. Perhaps someone he's bringing over from the Free States will be of some assistance in the future. Now, in episode 5, we learned that Renato is working for Prince Panhard, using his abilities of remaining undetected via electronic means to transport Kindred, specifically Kindred from the Free States. Now, at the time I heard this, I said, well, New York City is far away. They might consider all of California the Free States, or they could also be talking about the chaos in San Diego or San Francisco with Vannevar gone and the Anarchs revolt and all that other stuff. So it doesn't necessarily mean missing camis in LA by night are gonna start popping up in New York City. But now we learn that no, you're completely wrong, Huddy. Renato is transporting Camarilla Kindred who survived the SI attack on Los Angeles. Specifically, Suzanne, the Toreador Seneschal, who at the moment lies in torpor, and Fiona, played by the wonderful Ash Minnick we see every week on Club Auspex. This likely means that Vannevar has indeed met the final death. Poor Vanny. Kalita and Rafferty rejoin the group, and immediately Kiem brings up the bones stolen from the warehouse in order to see how Kalita will react. And as if on cue, she immediately denies there were any bones in the warehouse. Coco tells her that she literally has a manifest coming with details about the bones, and Kiem casually says that her sire doesn't love her as much as she thinks he does, to which Kalita immediately denies, but eventually comes to realize that Kiem is right about Rafferty putting the whammy on her anyway. Rafferty is annoyed, but the coterie push back with all their questions, including Kiem, who wants to know where her sire Amadeus is. In response, Rafferty plays a recording of the coterie's conversation inside the town car, minus Coco's voice that shows up only as static. Likely, Rafferty has recorded every conversation they've had in that car, and he reminds them that Wilcox works for him, not them. Renato steps in, ready as ever it seems to give a history lesson about the Sabbat, clearly the thing that weighs heaviest on his mind, and for good reason, and tries to convey the seriousness if there is indeed a Tzimitzi from the Black Hand running around the Bronx. Kalita point blank asks Rafferty if he's working for the Sabbat, and he doesn't deny it. As to the question of Amadeus, Rafferty does admit to getting rid of him, claiming he couldn't be trusted with Renato and Glassjaw, acknowledging that they were aware that this had happened and did not try to stop it. Rafferty looks to Kalita and tells her not to feign surprise, declaring that she would have done the same thing, thrown any of her own coterie under the bus to further her own ambitions, to which Kalita agrees, saying that the option is always there if she doesn't like one of them, causing her coterie to quickly turn on her. I was shocked that she admitted this in front of her coterie. Braun, perhaps looking the most disappointed, tells Kalita that he didn't know their coterie was nothing more than a popularity contest to her. her. Kiem, clearly tired of the trajectory of the conversation, starts reciting 5, 6, 7, 8, something the coterie established back in episode 1 as a signal to either retreat or fight. They've never really nailed down which one it was, but from this exchange, the coterie infers the latter. And as Braun asks if she's sure, Kalita and Coco loudly protest, with Kalita using Dominate on Braun. With both of them rolling criticals, Kalita is able to command Braun to protect her and Rafferty at all costs. In response, Kiem curses them all for betraying her, and Rafferty calls security to his office. Kiem runs out onto the balcony and with Cat's Grace, a celerity power, leaps into the pool below, taking no damage. Glassjaw tells Braun he's sorry and that it's not right what Kalita is doing, and goes for her, and unfortunately Braun intercepts him, holding him back. Coco, stepping in front of her sire to protect him, activates Arms of Araman and pulls Glassjaw away from Braun. Kalita and Rafferty make their egress, and Braun is compelled to follow them. Coco begs her sire to interfere, and in response, Renato activates Stygian Shroud, an Oblivion ability that causes unnatural darkness to blanket an area. Those apart from the Invoker find themselves struggling to see and hear their surroundings, and mortals are drained of their very life by the suffocating power. Braun, showing off a new power he's learned, activates Unseen Passage, turning invisible in the cloud of darkness. Kalita, still holding on to Rafferty, suddenly feels him torn from her grasp, and as the shadows dissipate, Kalita sees that Renato has stabbed Rafferty with a large sword and thrown him bodily through a glass table. Kalita pulls out her pistol and shoots Renato at point-blank range. Coco goes to use Touch of Oblivion on Kalita, an Oblivion power that channels an annihilating, debilitating force through physical touch, and in response, Kalita also shoots Coco, but not nearly as successfully as with Renato, as she watches her skin shrivel and snap away from the bone. Braun breaks his obfuscate and tackles Coco, still compelled to protect Kalita and her sire. Renato announces that their coterie is at an end and claims the Sterling as his own, telling Kalita that Coco is worth 20 of her and that although he knows it is not Braun's fault, if he hurts his child, he will kill him. As Kalita and Rafferty leave with Braun in tow, Coco begs him not to go, and Braun, looking conflicted but helpless, tells Coco not to take a dive. Kiem makes it to the street level, and Luke is not far away. As we know since episode 6 of this season, Kiem keeps him abreast of her location so he can always be nearby. Kiem tells him that her coterie is dead to her, and Luke suggests she hides in the Bronx. And Kiem seems amenable to the idea of seeing Lizzie again, but decides that Club Crimson is where she wants to hide for the time being anyway. Luke also informs her that her father is on his way to the city, which can only mean terrible things, I assume. Alone in the Sterling, Coco informs Renato that Rafferty is vying for the Primogen seat, and he is unsurprised. Instead, he asks if Coco is capable of running this place, which she says she is, and they head down to take a tour of their new domain. Meanwhile, Rafferty, Kalita, Braun, and Glassjaw have safely escaped the Sterling, and Rafferty tells Kalita that he had planned for this possible outcome, and reminds her that what vampires play is the long game, that each night is merely a single move on an eternal chessboard. Kalita replies that from now on he needs to let her in or his chess pieces will be lost one by one. And Rafferty agrees, divulging to her that he eliminated Kiem's sire because Amadeus found out that Rafferty was dealing with all the sects, Sabat included, and had designs on the Primogen seat. And Amadeus threatened to go to the Primogen, Addison Payne, with all the information. Therefore, he had to be taken out. Braun angrily tells Kalita that what she did to him was wrong, but she still doesn't release him from her dominate. And Rafferty tells Braun that being loyal to him and his child will further his station beyond his imaginings. But Braun responds with a big "fuck you, James Rafferty," which is something I want on a t-shirt. And this is where season 2 comes to an end. And all my predictions of a coterie just being held together by the thinnest of strings came true, even though I wanted to be wrong. Now in the By Night series, we've seen the LA coterie come apart at the seams, but this was over a period of 5 seasons, and they did not physically attack each other, not like this anyway. The Anarch coterie in season 1 of New York by Night had some pitfalls, messy mortal deaths, and petty arguments, but even the betrayal from Ray in the finale did not end with the coterie fracturing so completely. But this is what happens when ambitions are high and the will and determination to achieve them is even higher. And now we have to wait until season 3 to see how these stories come together. If you haven't already, please go follow The World of Darkness on Twitch and YouTube, and if you can, sub to those channels as well. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to me and let me know your thoughts on season 2, episode 8, Made of Strife in the comments. As always, I'll see you in the next one.